stripping away of the old identity, when you start going like, this doesn't resonate with me anymore, there can be this sense of the waters feel choppy for a while. And so if somebody's listening and they're going through that, nothing's wrong. You don't have to fix yourself.
Somewhere along the way, many of us build identities that feel solid, reliable, useful, and then life happens. There's loss and caregiving, roles shifting. This is midlife stuff. This is getting older stuff, right? And suddenly the question is, what do I do next? Who am I now? I've been there. And today I'm talking with Dr. Kathleen Perry. She's a former acupuncturist and functional medical practitioner who stepped away from her clinical career after walking through profound loss. And instead of rushing to reinvent herself, she's exploring what it means to simply be. Kathleen, thank you so much for being with me.
I'm so glad to be here.
You had a clinical career for a long time, right?
Correct.
How would you describe who you were in that chapter of your life?
I think that a constructed identity arose for me at a pretty young age that was kind of an achiever. Along with that, some perfectionism and got to get it right. I became an entrepreneur at 15. I started my own little business. Yes.
What was the business?
My first job was with the Parks and Recs department, and I sold pop and chips and hot dogs. And then eventually they needed an assistant coach in the summer gymnastics program. And then mothers of these young girls started asking me, can you help my daughter with some choreography? And I was a dancer also. So I started doing private choreography stuff for these young girls. And the Parks and Rec let me do it. And that was my first business.
That is so cool. At what point did you go into a medical practice?
My mom was a nurse, and I actually had an experience of being hospitalized with a fever of unknown origin, spinal taps, all kinds of antibiotics, and I had a reaction to it. I was in isolation with doctors and nurses, and my mom coming in with a mask on. And I
Mhm.
just remember then they released me and said, well, it was a fever of unknown origin. And I became really curious like, how do you keep yourself healthy? But I was in a car accident and somebody said, why don't you go see a chiropractor? I said, okay. My mom was kind of from that conventional medicine and just sparked something that was like, okay, the whole idea of vitalism, that this innate intelligence that runs our body is capable of healing it. Sometimes we get in the way of it with our thinking, with the amount of stress that we bring on, and habits and lifestyle. So I started in chiropractic, sports chiropractic, and then ended up with acupuncture and functional medicine. So many people I saw really had the lifestyle thing down. They knew what to do. Some of them struggled to, they needed a little coaching, a little guidance in how to get themselves to do what they knew how to do. But many of them knew that stress, psychological stress, was one of the biggest factors in hindering the body's ability to heal itself. And so I became interesting. I kept thinking, like, oh, why didn't I go become a psychologist? So I studied psychology and applied it in my practice. Probably in 2005, I created a life coaching program. I didn't call it that. And I
Mhm.
invited a handful of women who were high achieving women in my practice to join me once a month for a year. And I curated it and made it up as I went along. And that's what really was the big spark, saying, I really think I want to do something like that. But it took something else to kind of get me to let go of that. I think for me, there was honestly some fear. Can I do this new thing?
Yeah.
Desire was there. Back to perfectionism and got to get it right. I was afraid to try something new and fail. I think that was probably the biggest thing. Let me figure this out and get some practice and get all the education I've just started a podcast and I don't feel ready to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway.
We touched on this before we hit the
Mhm.
record button, and I'm so glad you brought it up because I've been doing this podcast for close to 6 years, but I had the idea for the podcast for 2 years before I committed to do it.
I have you beat because my idea for a podcast was 4.5 years before I actually did it. A few things happened in my life that became prohibitive for 6 or 12 months. My mom was not doing well, and I was devoting a lot of time there. In the summer of 2020, my husband died, and he'd been ill and in hospice for 18 months prior to
Mm.
that. And I remember him saying, I don't want any of the hospice nurses here. And so when COVID hit, I said, okay, I'll step away from my practice and I'll come home and I'll be there with you. I'm going to walk you all the way home and I'll do it by myself, which was really hard. And I didn't do it
Wow.
entirely by myself, but primarily. Both of us talked about the fact that my practice was kind of the rock that I stood on. It was my identity. And of course, it probably wouldn't be that long before he died and I'd go back to practice. Well, I remember engaging with a grief counselor before my husband died because I was dealing with a lot of anxiety. I remember her saying to me, who are you going to be when you're no longer Mrs. Mike Perry? And I was like, I'm going to be who I've always been because I didn't have this strong identification as wife. I loved him. I enjoyed being his wife, but it wasn't the identity. Come to find out later, the identity was doctor, practice owner, successful businesswoman.
Mm.
And that fell apart in COVID. That fell apart. But there was something else going on then, this deeper calling that had always been there, bringing me toward wanting to do the coaching. So I couldn't re engage in work at all. I knew I wasn't going to go back to my practice. I called the landlord and said, yeah, I'll keep paying rent, but see if you can find somebody to take my lease over because I'm not coming back. I knew I was done. And that
Wow.
happened
That must have been
before my
scary.
that happened before my husband died. That happened a month after COVID hit. I was like, not doing it. It was scary. Again, life opened doors. Life did some amazing things. And so it was about 18 months before I started feeling like, okay, I can even start having coaching conversations now. Because
18 months after your husband died?
after he died, yes,
Gotcha.
which was
Gotcha.
way longer than I thought it was going to be. But people would say, you're taking good care of yourself. Oh, yeah. And what I would say, Yvonne, is that my cup wasn't empty, but I feel like it needed to be overflowing for me to show up for my coaching clients. And that took 18 months. And then one day I woke up and it was like, I'm ready.
Was it literally like you woke up and you were ready? Because that has happened to me in the past.
Well,
Feel like that, or was it
well,
gradual?
for sure, I can say almost every transformation, every shift for me has been like compounding interest, where I'll look back and go, oh my gosh, look where I've come. So I did wake up one day and know that I was ready. But the knowing came from a lot of inner work.
Yes.
Like I woke up and I got hit over the head by the cosmic 2x4, but there was a day. Yeah. I mean, I do remember it was right around Christmas in 2021, I think. Yeah. And so in January 22 is when I started devoting to my coaching practice. So tell me, you got to tell me, what was your
Oh,
kind of wake up one day and no?
there have been a couple. And as you said, like that compounding interest in the bank, both times were preceded by long periods of kind of like a lost in the woods feeling. So I used to be an actress and a stage performer. And once I had kids, I realized I didn't want to do that anymore. But it was everything I had ever wanted. I had been singular in my pursuit of being an actor. And I moved to New York City in my 20s and was living my best life, like, getting work, doing regional theater. And once I gave that up, I was like, wow, well, who am I? Who am I without that title? It was a title I'd given myself, right? And 5 years of going, who am I? Ended up with me now a mom of two kids, and I found a job that was like, okay, here's a job I can do, whatever. I had a really sketchy resume coming out of being an actor. It was all survival jobs. But I found this job. I got promoted after 3 months and laid off in the next month because it was 2008. I was 40 at that point, and I remember coming home and asking my husband, what am I going to be when I grow up? I am 40. I feel unemployable. I'm a failure. He's like, go to bed and sleep on it. It's going to be okay. And I literally woke up in the morning after that and turned to him and I was like, I want to be a photographer. And it came out of nowhere. Now, I had been trying to take good pictures of my kids with my point and shoot camera for years. I'd been trying to take good pictures of flowers, always disappointed. I didn't know that that was even something I wanted until I did. And it was literally a Shazam. I woke up that morning with
Yeah.
that, and then I went into action. And starting the podcast was the same thing. Isn't that a cool idea for a podcast? Maybe not the time. I'm trying to build my photography business. The kids take a lot of energy. Kids are still young. And then one day in December of 2019, I remember getting up that next morning or sometime soon after and going, I'm doing this. I don't know how I'm doing it, but it's time.
What we both share is because I didn't really talk about the details of what was going on during that 18 months, but similar to what you said, like as the old identity is kind of unwinding, and we're asking that question, like, who am I really beneath the roles, beneath the voice in my head that says, well, you should, and you went to school for this, and, you're a mom and you had all this invested and you don't even know what you want. And beneath that, there is a still silent, quiet inner knowing, that has always been there with us. It's just a pure awareness. It's there. And I'm sure you touched into that, but the stripping away of the old identity, when you start going like, this doesn't resonate with me anymore, there can be this sense of the waters feel choppy for a while. And so if somebody's listening and they're going through that, nothing's wrong. You don't have to fix yourself. There's no 5 steps to this. Do you know what I mean?
Don't you
Like
wish there
clearly,
was?
no, not really.
No, not really. Okay.
I don't wish that because
Oh,
I've lived enough life to say this way of knowing is more personal, or not, that's not the right word, but it's authentic and it leads you to something that's got some juice in it.
I hear you. Are you saying it's like you have to earn it? It's like you own it because nobody hands it to you. There's no 5-step
No,
program.
I don't. No, no,
No.
no, no earning. Like it's who we are. This ability to be present and for knowing what to do next, kind of like a game of warmer, colder, you know, we're made that way. We're engineered that way. And if we try to follow a set of steps, that kind of puts us in a box. The word earn doesn't
I
resonate with
hear
me
you.
at all.
Yeah. There's still like some little thing in me that always feels like I have to earn something.
I,
So there you
well,
go. It was popping out right
it
there.
does, and
Yeah.
that's good because you see it and you feel that's not true.
Yeah.
You know better than that. That's old conditioning. And guess what? the conditioning is going to come up and come up. If you're growth oriented like you and I are, we're going to keep seeing what we didn't see. That voice in the head has been running the show for a while. And the more you see it, you go, oh, that's not true. But I still get caught up with the perfectionism. I'm getting ready to record an episode, and it's like, ooh, let me think about this a little bit more. Maybe I need some index cards. And I've done that on a couple episodes, said, well, I'll use my own notes as a guide here. But the ones where I just hit record and just trust that authentic inner voice beneath the noise up there telling me I'm not good enough and you better get it right because this is going to be recorded in perpetuity
Right.
forever. Just let go of that.
Ooh.
I bet you were exploring when the photography thing came up. I bet you just already knew that there were aspects of creativity and making people smile and feel good and how you enjoyed taking pictures. Like it wasn't entirely foreign. There was probably something calling you in that direction or not.
Well, with the photography, the interesting thing is looking back on it now, I have a whole theory.
What's the theory?
My theory is that I had probably from about fourth grade, I had a little Instamatic camera. I loved taking pictures of my friends. And I look back now and I can see, like, if I were to go over to somebody's house and they had a photo album available to look through, I could sit and look through somebody's photo album and be like, wow, fascinated. Just the stories that are there in a photo album.
Yeah.
And so I look back now and I can see the ties to my acting career is storytelling. So theater is storytelling, photography is storytelling. What I do here on the podcast is storytelling.
Love
That's
that.
the link. And I did have my grandfather was an amateur photographer, so was one of my aunts was an amateur photographer, but they were dealing with film and chemicals and dark room. And I would look at my grandfather's camera and I wanted nothing to do with that because it looked way too complicated. All those buttons and things and lenses and stuff I didn't know what to do with. I was very intimidated by the mechanics of photography when I was younger. But I love photographs.
Mhm.
I had been using a point and shoot camera film to take pictures. I was taking pictures of my nieces and nephews for years. I loved a storytelling style photography. I don't know. I don't know. I have no explanation for how that happened.
But as you talk about it and the way you light up and your energy, Yvonne, it's clear that your theory isn't a theory, that I can feel the thread. I feel my heart open up as you talk about that thread of storytelling. Like, oh yeah, that's her. And I haven't had that much interaction with you. I haven't listened to a ton of your podcast, but that comes through. Absolutely. Maybe
Yeah.
you didn't have the words to put to it, but something led you to acting, something led you to photography. And I think there's this deeper intelligence operating in all of us. Everybody has it when we can let go of our roles and our shoulds and our beliefs, and especially those core limiting beliefs. I love the question, who am I?
I do think everybody's got a singular path to get where they're going. And I think that no matter what, we are blooming at any given point in time. It may not look like blooming on the outside. So, how does somebody listening right now who might be feeling stuck in a role that was once a good fit and no longer feels exactly right, what can somebody do to let their inner self come out and have its moment?
The key to me is to recognizing who you actually are. And once you see that, and once you realize that what you've taken yourself to be is, it's not that it's not real, It's just not the totality of who you are. So I
Mm,
think that I love to start when I'm working with someone. I primarily work with women who've achieved a lot, but they're feeling this deeper calling to something else, this path that you're talking about. The first place for me is to do a combination of identifying who you're not. You're not the voice in your head. You're not all the roles. I hesitate to say because we are that, but it's not the totality. So, this ultimate, deeper truth of who we are is spacious and open and all knowing, and it's quiet and it's been with us our whole life. So,
yeah.
that's my first is to point people to see that. So, there are plenty of books that you can read about that, podcasts that you can listen to, coaches that specialize in helping people identify their true nature. Then I would say to anybody listening, they probably already know something that helps them get out of their head and into their body. So I
Mhm.
am a fan of breath work, um, yoga, and not the kind of yoga I used to go to yoga that was an athletic competition. And again, it was my own, but yoga that brings breath into it, that creates, let's get into those sacred geometries and really be and being present. So anything that could be walking in nature. A lot of people do what's called automatic writing or free journaling meditation also, and it doesn't
That's been
meditate.
huge for me. That
It was
was,
big for me.
mm-hmm.
I kind of had a phase and I meditate throughout my whole day now. I don't sit for an hour. There were times when I had a 20-minute practice and there were times when I would sit for an hour. Very valuable, and I'm not saying I wouldn't go back to that.
I want to know more. What does it look like to meditate throughout your whole day? What does that look like?
Let me just finish this
Oh,
last
okay.
thread about trust. I would say to the listener, there's a knowing within you as to what helps you become present. So listen to that or try these things and see if it works. I did self-help for so long. And to me, what I'm talking about is more at the root of why we feel that we don't need to fix ourselves. We don't need somebody from the outside telling us what to do. That's just really important. Back to meditating throughout the day. It's exactly what I described. For just brief moments in our day, settle into our body. It could be taking one deep breath. It could be dropping your shoulders. It could be going outside. Within the day, just remembering who you're not and who you are brings you back to this, one person that I've listened to amongst the gazillion teachers and authors and Adyashanti says that true meditation really is just being 100% okay with what is.
That
So
is
I've
so hard to do. Uh, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Or I'm trying to play into it. Let's just say I'm trying to hold it loosely and not be so working on it, you know?
Yeah, well, tell me why does it feel hard to be okay with what is?
I'm having a really hard time watching what's happening in our country right now. Really having a hard time with it for a lot of reasons that I'm not going to go into. But it's my waking thought. It's very fear-based. And I'm having a hard time just being like, okay, well, this is what's happening. I have come to some peace around that through meditation, through moving my body, through trying to constantly check in through the day. I have a lot of different tools that I will tap into when I can feel anxiety coming up around something. Last week, I tried tapping EFT, like emotional freedom tapping, which I had tried a few years ago. It didn't seem to work for me back then. And I thought, it's a little woo. I don't know what that is. But last week, I did it a couple of times. And one time I was super anxious about a situation. On a scale of 1 to 10, I was at a 9, I would say. I did a guided tapping meditation from Insight Timer. And I will say that it worked like I was like, wow, what just happened? Because that really worked. So I'll be using that tool again.
That's a perfect example of your intuition just said, hey, I tried EFT before and I'm certified in it, by the way, but I haven't used it in a long time. But it aligns with acupuncture. And your intuition said, I tried it before and it didn't help, but wonder if I try it again. And now it's helping. Like that's a perfect example of just doing an experiment. Beautiful. And staying open. I'm not sure how, I don't know if I said it. If I did, I want to correct myself. If I said meditation is being, I hope I didn't say being okay, because what's going on in the world, we can be with it and let it be what it is. And it does not mean we're okay with it. Does
Right.
not mean we're condoning it. Does not mean that we're going to just sit back and meditate and not do anything. And for some people, they won't they won't do anything but meditate and send love, and that's their thing. But as we can be with what is, and we can let it be, and we can be in a, and not trying to fix us or fix the world. There's nothing wrong with feeling anxious in your body, but not resisting that. You know what this is?
Oh, is that the Chinese finger lock thing?
The finger trap, right? You
Finger
pull it
trap.
right.
That's exactly what it feels like, isn't it?
It is
For
the
anybody
mind.
who everybody who's not watching
Yeah.
video right now,
Ah, yes.
the Chinese finger trap is like a little bamboo tube. So it flexes when you push in, and you can put your fingers into the tube. And then when you go to pull out, it tightens up because of the flex and the weave of the bamboo. And then you're locked.
Yeah.
You're locked there because there's a resistance, right?
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with you when you feel an activation in your body as you see what's going on in the world. But then if you can step back and go, just right now in this present moment, here I am. I'm sitting in a chair. And I don't mean this to sound in a selfish way, but I'm okay right now. That regulates your nervous system. If you don't allow your nervous system to become regulated, then you're not able to go out and help if that's your thing. And I do believe our first commitment is to ourselves first. I'm not a parent, but put your own oxygen mask on so that you can help everyone else.
I think you said something earlier was that wasn't that you were completely depleted or that your cup was completely empty, but you needed to be overflowing. That's what I hear there. And that is what I've been, when I'm able to catch a little piece from this feeling, that is it. It's like, okay, fill yourself up so that when an opportunity arises where I can actually have some agency and affect change in some good way, that I have it to give.
Yes, absolutely.
I can't fix everything. I just can't,
Yeah.
not by myself. So it really is like two things are true at the same time. What do they call that? A paradox?
Yep.
It's a paradox.
Yeah. Tell me more about the paradox.
The paradox of, I guess it's like having to acknowledge that the situation is what the situation is, even though I don't like it. Part of what gives me a little bit of peace around this is the idea that as a little human in the universe, maybe I don't have the full scope of perspective around this situation. And maybe there's something bigger at work here that I can't comprehend.
You
And that
know,
gives me a little bit of peace.
I see that as a belief, meaning that I can't prove that it's true, but it happens to be a belief that I intentionally choose to believe. Just that if we zoom out, like you said, we're one speck in the whole universe in just one moment in timeless time. And that something's at work here that is beyond our capability of seeing. And again, made up belief, but I choose that one. I intentionally know it's a belief, and I choose to believe that.
There's some power in that because any belief that we've got is probably based on repeated things that have been put in front of us. And whatever belief that is, it may or may not be based in any fact. So why not choose something that gives us a little bit of freedom to move within it?
The only thing that's true is I'm sitting in my chair right now, I'm breathing right now. We can know that, but anything that comes from the mind, and it's not to say that there aren't thoughts that are useful and helpful, but many of them are just repeated patterns comparing to this. That one took me a while. I love it that the clients I work with see this so much faster than I did. I remember going, what? Those thoughts up in my head, like I wasn't the architect of them and they're not true. Like, no, that thinking is me. I created those. And then I started, when that came apart, whoa.
Amazing.
Yes. And do you find that a lot of people find that uncomfortable or exciting or somewhere in between?
I think most people find it uncomfortable, and I, at alternating times, I will say, find it either uncomfortable or exciting.
Yeah.
Part of that, I think, is based on how I choose to think about it. Like, it's one of the things I say. I always say, bloom like you mean it. Let's go back to that paradox thing. I believe that we are always blooming, whether or not we choose to. But when we bloom like we mean it, that to me means being intentional about stepping into that change, into that emptiness with exploration and excitement. And if we're blooming like we mean it, then it's exciting.
Yeah. Oh, you are talking my language, girl. I love the idea of just unlimited possibility. I love the blank canvas. And I get that it can be scary. We're taught, like, what are you going to be when you grow up? Set your goals, um, achieve. And I love what you're saying. Like, we are blooming all the time. And we can put some intentionality around that. I was just this morning talking to someone about a podcast episode that I wanted to create about the difference between the title of it is going to be the acorn versus aliveness. I think we're always blooming. And that I think we can say, I was an acorn, I was an oak tree for a while, and now I want to be a rose. And as in different career choices. So I feel like there's an emergence and an evolution happening for all of us. Not that we're steering it in any way. I feel like life will show us the very next step, one step at a time. But I still think we can say, I want to go in this direction. I think letting go of attachment, like it has to turn out a certain way, there's a lot of freedom in that.
That's where the play comes in, I think.
Yes, talk about play a little bit or a
Well,
lot.
it's an inquiry for me right now because I am playful, but I also tend to be, because I am a recovering perfectionist, I tend to grind on getting things done and getting it done right. And so I've been in an inquiry into what could it mean to put out a podcast episode and just let it go? decide on a guest and go, okay, come on in, let's see what happens. And still have some intention, of course, around things, but not hold on to the results of what happens with it. Keep doing the work in a joyful, playful way and see what develops. It's like this being versus doing question I'm looking at is like how the doing that I do comes from a place of unworthiness and wanting to prove myself. So how much can I just allow myself to be myself and let whoever's in here let her out to play and to bloom and become whatever is next. I don't know what's next. And that's exciting.
That really touches me in my heart. And the way you said it, I know you're going to do it.
Thank
And
you.
in my lens of identity, you said it. The get it right, the perfectionism, we have to let that go in order to play. If there's any kind of feeling in the body or thinking or tightening around, got to get it right, got to do it a certain way, then that inhibits play. So your inquiry and the being versus doing, that's spot on. And you've had aspects of the podcast where you've felt that freedom of just being. I bet it happens a lot for you in photography.
Yeah. It happens when I'm in a session with people, or if I'm just wandering with my camera or the camera in my phone and I want to take a picture or something that feels playful. Anybody who's ever been in a session with me knows what a goof I become when I am behind the camera. It feels like a transformation. It feels like I'm in the zone. Being in
That
conversation with you feels like being in the zone. Whereas doing episodes, doing something without note cards and just letting it flow, I'm like, whoa, so scary to just sit and talk without a plan or without an outline. I haven't learned to get there yet. Whereas the conversations with guests feel much more like I still have a plan. I have an idea of what we're going to talk about, but I didn't know this was going to go where it went today.
isn't
Exactly.
that fun?
Yeah.
That is play. We can think about our listeners like they're going to have a different experience, but I always bring it back to the body. Like how does it actually feel when
Mm.
you let yourself have this playful conversation? We're just going to let it go where it goes. How does it feel in your body?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
How that feels in my body? It's a little like a tightrope high wire act. Like, ooh, where's this go? Like, I literally didn't know how deep we were going to get today. So I'm like, ooh, okay. And I had some questions in mind and I have thrown them all away. And I feel awake. That's what my body feels like. I feel awake right now. I feel engaged. I feel curious, a little tingly, maybe.
Tingly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awake, engaged, those are concepts. That's labeling what's happening. So if it felt like you're walking on a tight wire, ooh, that's like butterflies in my stomach. That's like jittery. That's like buzzing. That's like that aliveness. The body feels like it's, and that's your signal. That's your signal that, how does it feel? I love to, because the body knows way before the mind, and the mind will try to put a label on it, and that's fine too. The mind can do what it does. But yeah, I mean, how much fun has this been?
Yeah. It's like when I go roller skating
Oh,
or paddleboarding. Both of those activities require my complete and utter focus. And any worries or anxiety that I had before, as soon as my feet hit the water and I'm going in on a paddleboard, I don't know what happens. It all just goes whoosh. And then I'm focused on staying upright on the paddleboard. And then sometimes I lie down on the paddleboard and I just float and it's heavenly.
that's like meditation, right? The mind quiets and you're present because you have this focus of staying on top of the water.
Yeah. Skating
Beautiful.
feels like I'm flying, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
so if you were to connect to the sensations in your body, remember what it feels like, and then say, when I'm podcasting, just notice when does the body feel like that? Then follow that. Because I do it too. Oh, there's something that I want to refer to, or I find my mind searching for the best word. What am I going to say next? And before even the mind starts doing that, I can sort of feel like my shoulders getting a little tense. So that's like a little check in for me, like a little check engine light. Ding, 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 don't go there. Just be free, just play. I love play. I love the idea of making what we do play. And back to when you asked the question about what can this listener do that's feeling this deeper calling, but they're in these roles and they just don't know how did they discover that. Something for them that feels like play. Not that that thing would be the thing they're meant to do, but gets them in that space of now creative ideas can come.
Amen. I'm a believer in that. How can people find you and your podcast and all the good things to connect with you?
Yeah, I have a website and it's kathleenperry.com. Um, there's a membership on there called the Explorers Club. And then the podcast, I have a YouTube channel, Dr. Kathleen Perry on YouTube. The podcast is called Identity Matters.
Love it. Oh, thank you so much for this conversation. This was rich.
Oh, it has just been a joyful, playful, and deep conversation with you. And I'm really grateful that we met.
Thank you. And for you listening, listen, if this stirred something in you, especially if you're in a chapter where your roles are shifting or falling away, if this does resonate for you and you think it would help somebody else, share this with them, please. Sometimes reinvention is about returning to something quieter in yourself and going on that exploration and that journey. So, my friend, I'll see you next week. In the meantime, bloom like you mean it.